So if you lay high fiber cable across Lake Michigan, you can run it through cities by running it along the river. Yeah, you can lay high fiber cable through the river. So across the lake and then down the river, and you can run it along rivers throughout the state of Illinois. In every state, rivers run most of America, but primarily through the Midwest. So you can run through the lake and down the rivers all kinds of infrastructure now. So that means you don't have to tear up the streets, right? If you're using the rail lines, the highway lines, laying them across the lake, laying them through the rivers, then that means you can move a lot of infrastructure without tearing up all the streets. And then another way to move them off of the river is you would move them through the sewer lines, truly through the sewer lines. And so you would move them along the highways, railways, the RTA in Chicago, and then you can branch off through the sewer lines. And so the sewer lines go everywhere. So that means you don't have to rip up streets. And that means that they're very easy to get to, too. You have readily easy access that you don't have to, if you have to do work, you don't have to block off the streets or close the streets to do work most of the time. And so running through along the river, running along the RTA or the highway or, the other train lines, the metro line and so on, and it's another way for those lines to generate revenue, right? And like I said, you can run pipelines along the rail lines. And so the rail lines would be opposed to it, right? Naturally opposed to pipelines. But not if you're running them through the rail lines to pipelines. That means the rail companies get revenue from the oil lines. Yeah, the oil lines running through the rail lines. And you don't have to do any environmental impact study, because those were already done with the rail lines. So that means the rail companies get revenue from the pipelines, and the rail companies, instead of being against the pipelines because they want the rail to move the oil and natural gas and that, now you're running them through under the rail lines or next to the rail lines. Now the rail company is getting revenue from the oil and natural gas pipelines, and now they're not against it. And the rail lines run everywhere in the United States, basically. And so now you can move things along the rail line. Even water lines, say if you want to move water lines or something like that. And you're trying to move them for long distances, you don't want to tear up a lot of land, right? You want to preserve the existing infrastructure of cities and the nation, and you don't want to dredge up new land and, so on. And so if we can use the existing highways, freeways, expressways, riverbeds across the lakes, the RTA, which I'm coming up on, you can run stuff along the elevated line under it, high fiber cable or something like that as well. And that would be AT&T. AT&T is big into high fiber cable. So that's their bread and butter, right? And so is Comcast. Do you know you can run the cable lines through the RTA and then branch off from the RTA? So you can run high fiber or high cable, and you can run AT&T and Comcast through the RTA lines. So you don't have to worry about it. You're not running natural gas or anything else. And so you don't have to worry about blowing up in that. And now you're running your cable and everything. And then eventually, if you transition electricity into light, then you can move it through here as well. And you don't have to worry about a risk to the riders. and then it converts from light into electricity once it branches off. And so you can move a lot of that through the city, and the RTA, CTA, they get a shitload of revenue, right? Shitload of revenue. So, and then eventually you can integrate all this lighting system and have the lights being controlled citywide by a master system that you can integrate all these lights and light poles, and you can have dimmers on the lights. Truly, in the summertime, the street lights should go on later, but they can also go on lighter. So you can have dimmers on street lights. And so when it's lighter out, the street lights can be less. And when it's darker out, the street lights can be more bright. So they have light-sensitive systems on the street lights. And the street lights change its lighting based on necessity. So you're not using a lot of power when it's nice and bright. And, in the summertime and that, even at 9 p.m. and 10 p.m., it's still pretty light. And so the street lights don't have to be that bright. So you can dim them during the summer months and so on, and get them brighter during the winter months. And some days in the winter, it's brighter than others. So you can adjust the brightness of the street lights. Eventually, you're trying to tie all this infrastructure in together. And I believe you need to put the red light cameras. You need to put on the stop signs now. Yeah. Now, instead of red lights, stop sign cameras for people running stop line signs. More people are willing to run a stop sign than a red light. And that's where the cameras need to be, especially on side streets. Yeah, especially on side streets. People run all these stop signs. And so you can put stop sign cameras, and it says, photo enforced stop signs. And so if you run the stop sign, they bust you. I think it's more important than on the lights, because people are less likely to run the street lights, and they're more likely to run the stop signs, especially stop signs that are on side streets. They blow them all the time in comparison. So if you start photo enforcing the stop signs, that's much better. And that protects people on the side streets where you have little kids and mothers with babies, and you have more elderly people and that. And so they're less likely to blow the stop sign. So isn't that better? So we can do this whole infrastructure system, and we don't have to purchase any new land. So for the people that want to run the oil and gas pipelines, they don't have to go out and buy any land. They can use existing lines on the rail lines, and they run from Canada through, and then we can expand the rail lines all through Latin America, and then you can run the pipelines along the rail lines. So you can kill multiple birds, natural gas and oil pipelines along the rail lines, and you can kill, two birds with one stone. And for the rail companies, it's a win, and for the natural gas lines, it's a win, because they're using joint land, so both of them get breaks on costing. So it makes it more feasible, because you're going to do one feasibility study for the rail lines, the new rail lines, and that feasibility study, once done, then you can run all kinds of infrastructure. Here's a rail line right here crossing over all the gas lines, pipelines, and you're running them on the side. And they're underneath and they're protected. And you can run cable, high fiber optics, electrical, so on. And they get all the money, and you don't have to tear up any new land. You don't have to acquire any new land. And then you can run it through, offshoot it, through the sewer systems and that. So I mean, so you can use all this infrastructure that's existing, and it cuts everybody's costing. We can save a lot on the infrastructure bill by using already existing and river lines, right? So if you're using these already existing pathways that don't interfere with anything, then it's very easy. Like you have coming up here, you have back here, I should say, the Lincoln Yards project. Here, let me go right. And so you have this infrastructure project, the Lincoln Yards, and it's going to be right along the river. And so you can pull all the energy lines and you can move all the waste lines out along the riverbed. Now, they're not dumping into the river. Obviously, you're setting up systems in that, valve systems, where they have automatic shutoffs. Truly. So if you're setting up the lines, you're putting valves in that can be electronically controlled, that can shut off at the gas lines and everything. So if you're running them, and say there's a gas line and you're running, say, an oil line, and you're running it under the subway or water line, well, you don't have to worry about it flooding the subway if they have shutoff valves. Truly. So if there's any break in pressure, it automatically shuts off. And you can run that with natural gas lines or oil lines where they put shutoff valves in every so many, half mile, quarter mile, or whatever. But they all the way along. And so if there's any break, there's only a little contamination, but not enough to cause any flood the subway. Not enough to flood the subway. Not enough to, cause an explosion, because the natural gas line has a automatic shutoff, and it shuts off, and so you have a little bit of gas, but there's not enough gas to cause any form of explosion. And if it does ignite, it goes away really quick because there's not enough gas. So it's like lighting a little fume. It burns out unbelievably quick. So even if there's a leak because of the shutoff valve, you only have so much that's released, and even if it catches, it burns up like that. And so it's not a continuous fire. It's gone because it's not getting fed. The pipeline's not breaking and continuously. And that's the problem with the city, with water mains and gas lines and everything else, is that the water shut off. We have shut off valves and that. None of it's automated. So if there's a change in pressure, it automatically shuts itself off. And then you can control them now through the infrastructure, and you can reopen them or close them even if there's not a loss in pressure, but you can set a safety system where if there's any drastic change in pressure, it automatically shuts off. So you can run them in subways and that, and if they break, there's no threat of flooding. So Google can get huge into this, into fiber optics. I don't understand why Google wouldn't get huge into fiber optics. I mean, and you don't have to worry about solar flares or any form of interruption with fiber optics. Because if the fiber lines, what you put them in, if they're shielded from electromagnetic pulses, fiber optics shielded from electromagnetic pulses, then you don't really have to worry about, and then you can create flexibility in the system for earthquakes and so on, or redundancy in the system with fault lines where you have redundant lines coming through connecting at different places. So if one goes down, the other one can support. So all you have to do is have enough excess capacity in the fiber optic lines, excess emergency capacity that you never use, that if one line goes down, the other line can absorb it. So if there's a fault in California and it cuts off at the fault line, there's places where you're coming in around the fault line where it won't fail. And so you have excess capacity, emergency capacity. So the backup line picks up the lost capacity and everything business as usual. So even if the fault causes the cut, the other line that avoided the fault has the emergency capacity and picks it up. And so you're shielded for all kinds of natural disasters or any kind of, EMP or anything. And so you're moving things. Even phone lines can go through fiber optics. Remember, I wrote the plan a long time ago that the cell towers would pick it up locally, so it wouldn't be able to go any farther than the cell tower, and then the nearest cell tower, and it picks it up from the cell tower and goes right into the fiber optics line. And then it moves the cell phone back through the fiber optics line and back out the tower. And it's all it is a switch and router. Switches and routers. That's how we used to connect phone lines. And they got automated switches and routers. So the fiber optic line can have automatic switches and routers, and it will route the signal from tower to tower automatically. As your single bars are going down, it switches off at a certain level of single bar strength, and it routes it to another tower while it's still feeding you on the existing tower, and then it eventually changes off to the new tower. So you continuously get single on the cell towers, but now the cell towers aren't beaming all over the place, and it's line of sight connection to the cell phone. Line of sight connection to the cell phone. So you're not sending stuff everywhere, and it's line of sight, and that means that cell signals can get unbelievably secure because they only spend a little travel time in the air from where your cell is to the nearest tower, and then it goes underground, and then it comes back up at the nearest tower, and it uses the connection strength to determine when it needs to open up a new channel to the next tower. It starts sending out the next tower and shuts down the current tower. And so it's handing it off from tower to tower, but it's moving a single not above ground, underground. So you're integrating cell towers with fiber optics or, microwave systems with fiber optic systems. And so microwave is still slower than a fiber optics. Fiber optics move at the speed of light or speed of a photon. So you're moving from slower systems to faster systems. That means you make cell phone connections even faster. Faster than a microwave or a radio wave. And so you're speeding up the infrastructure of communication. The connections are even that much more faster. And that's very important for all kinds of infrastructure. So when you're speeding up all this connection. And so if you're running, high-speed computers and so on and so forth, so cell companies will be in the game of rapid communication now. So Verizon, T-Mobile, and so on. And what are you saving? You're saving cities and that from all this needless Wi-Fi stuff. And that's why I said apartments and that should have shielding. And so you have a tower on top of your apartment building that feeds the signal down into your apartment, but it only feeds the signal down into the apartment based on carrier. So you have to turn on the cell feed that even come in your apartment. So you don't get random cell feeds inside your apartment, inside your house. It comes down through the antenna on the building or the house, and it only picks up your T-Mobile feed, and it only releases your cell phone into your house. So that means you don't get all this electromagnetic energy feeding into your property because your house is shielded. So it doesn't go to the outside, and no one from the outside can penetrate your house. And so now we're taking out all this general magnetivity, all this general energy that we're pumping in, and now everything is now Pacific. So everything is a line of sight for the cell phone, and everything in it. Your Wi-Fi doesn't go into your neighbors, and your neighbors doesn't go into you. And so no one, like Danya, she used to feed off of her neighbor's Wi-Fi system. And I told her to stop. But when I went to Starbucks, when I was next to Kinko's next door, at Starbucks by my office in Rosemont, the Kinko's kept on interfering with my Starbucks Wi-Fi. Because of building code, they can make it, you have to, and drywall can have shielding on it. Drywall itself, it says you have to put on magnetic shielding, a paint coat first before you put the outer coat. But drywall can come with magnetic shielding, drywall. So all drywall now would be remanufactured to have magnetic shielding. All drywall would have magnetic shielding, and then in the zoning you would have to have a paint coat to double it. You would have to put a primer coat. Under zoning, it says you have to put a primer coat that has magnetic shielding before you put on the primary coat. So you must put an undercoat that has magnetic shielding. And so you can put a clear coat on a brick building that has magnetic shielding on a brick building. And then you can glaze windows, windows with a clear coat that has magnetic shielding. So you don't have to worry about people tapping into your system because it's just in there. So no one, hacking into the system. There's not stuff flying through the airways where it can be captured by anyone. So everything starts becoming a secure, encrypted communication. And that means there is no corporate espionage, right? And if you're doing things right, you have these meters on your high fiber line. You know how much is getting put through it. And this is the problem of Global Crossing, that they banned the Chinese from being able to purchase Global Crossing because they are afraid they tap into it. But, they could tap into it with a sub, right? The sub could go down and still tap into the Global Crossing cable. So what would you do? You would put meters on the line, just like you have on a gas meter or electrical meter. And so you know how much is going through the line. And if there's any, and this is how tap things work. If I used to have one on my phone, I bought it from the Spice store, and it just meters the energy. And if the feed goes down, then it tells you potential tap. So same thing. So they know how much energy is going into the cable that's going across the ocean. And they know how much, and they read it again, how much energy is coming out of the cable. So there might be a minor loss of energy going through the fiber optics, but it'll be very minute. And so you can meter it going in and coming out, and then you can compare the differences, and you know if there's a leak or if somebody has tapped the fiber optic line. So you can set security into the fiber optic systems by putting meters that manage the energy going in and out of the fiber optic system. So if somebody wants to cut into the fiber optic system, you would automatically know that somebody cut in, and you would know a proximity of exactly where they cut in. So you don't have to worry about it. It's much more secure because they have to physically tap in. So they have to physically, and if you're putting it in, you're not putting in something that's easily cut into. So you're not making it easy for them to cut into the fiber optics. You're putting it in some kind of graphite or something that prevents it from being ever cut into. So there's indestructible, the very material that's incredibly impossible to cut into. And so you could put the material that makes it extremely hard to tap into, but you can meter the system, and that prevents somebody from tapping into the system. So you can create an infrastructure that's incredibly safe, and that means no one's, you mean you're getting more privacy than you've ever gotten in the history of mankind. More privacy, even for FBI communications, for police communications, because it's all line of sight. So those scanners getting it sent out all over, because they send it in radio waves, like my radio wave. But now, even here, I'm on K-Love, they can use cell towers. Yeah. Instead of doing radio towers, now you can use cell towers. And now the fiber optics go into the cell tower, and they have a little radio transmission. So now T-Mobile, Verizon, and all the cell phone companies now can provide the signal for FM and AM radio, and it's all line of sight. But that means they can tell how many people, because you turn to the frequency, and now those cell towers can measure the energy, because there's, this feedback thing. So the radio would send out a feedback to the tower, and it would bounce off the tower. It's pinging each other. And you need to ping each other constantly to tell where it is. But now they know for each frequency, now they know somebody's listening to K-Love. Now they know they're listening to, Q101.9. Now they know they're listening to Q101.1. So now radio can get statistics on who's listening. And they can work with all the cell providers, and now you don't have to worry about the radio towers anymore, and you're not sending out general energy anymore. Now it's specific, and the radio towers will work everywhere. So you don't worry about FM interference or AM interference and so on. And like I said, it would go into a tower at the building and get fed down into the building. And so you can choose radio or no radio, but you can get it through your computer? FM, AM radio through your computer in your office. And if you want to, you can get it through cable TV, through Comcast or AT&T. Even satellite would beam down, since the satellite owns AT&T, bought the satellite. The satellite sends directly down to a receiving tower, and that tower sends it out through the fiber optic cable to all its subscribers. And if it's, say, Dish Network, it sends it down into the fiber optic, and it comes out the cell towers. And the cell towers send it over to the dish. So it's only going through the air for the dish a short distance. And that means, guess what? If it rains out, there's storm, or Dish has perfect feed all the time. And now Dish is working with the cellular networks. Comcast, I'm on a Comcast phone. They have a cellular network. Now they can integrate its fiber optic network, its cable network, with its cellular network, with a dish type or satellite system. And so they would have a receiving dish that goes, so they send it up directly to the satellite via microwave. So line of sight, and then it would trade off to another dish from the ground, and it would only hit the satellite. GPS on the satellite to the ground. So the signal would only go up to the satellite. It wouldn't be general. And so it would pass it off, and the beam would weaken, and the new beam would start, and the old beam would shut down, and it would pass it from satellite to satellite. I mean, from ground station, the radio ground station, the radio microwave station sending straight up to the satellite, and it would just have a single bar. As the single weakens, the new one knows the position and would hook it up with the new microwave single right to the satellite. And so it would be Pacific line of sight, and it would move along and pass it around the world from station to station. And so there's no general airway. So it would have to be, they would have to get right in the path of the beam. Right in the path of the beam. So you know if your signal is being interfered with, because the satellite would receive so much energy from the beam. And if there's any degradation, then something's interfering with the beam. And so it can tell that if somebody's trying to tap in for the ground feed to the satellite. The ground feed to the satellite. So it's line of sight. And in the city, you can put the send-receive systems on the top of the Aon or the Sears Tower. Now those antennas become receivers for satellite system, and they also can send out to satellites. They can receive from a satellite, the Sears Tower, John Hancock, and they make money. These tall buildings become senders and receivers of information to satellites. So there's nothing interfering with them, and they have clear line of sight to them and line of sight back up. And since they're tall as buildings, they can stay in contact with a single satellite for a long range before it fades away, and then the next satellite picks up. There's a satellite behind it, and the current satellite lets go, and a new satellite picks it up, and the communication continues. As the satellites rotate around, the one lets go. As it moves away, the one coming picks it up. And so it switches off between satellites, and it's line of sight communication. So that means no one is hacking your shit unless they're staying in your direct beam. And as I point out, now we have direct beam through microwave and that, where it doesn't go out to the general area. It is a very condensed, focused energy going straight up to the satellite, straight down to the receiver. And it stays in contact because now we have global positioning in the satellite, GPS in the satellite, with global positioning on the receiving end, say the John Hancock building. So as the Earth rotates and the satellites rotate, they know where each other is at all times, and they have perfect line of sight connection. So that means people aren't going to be hacking into your shit. And so they would have to be sitting over and interfering. And then, like I said, if you're metering the energy received, they meter, because you know how much energy you sent, and you know how much drag there should be, or loss, truly based on atmospheric conditions, what it should be receiving. And if it's receiving any less, then somebody's messing with your signal. And just like it's sending back up to the satellite, and their satellite meters how much it's receiving, it knows that if somebody's messing with the signal, and more than likely it's a drone, right? Tapping into the signal, a drone. So you know that if somebody's sitting up there, or maybe a helicopter up there, because planes have to move, but drones can hover. And so you know that somebody, or, well, balloons move as well. And so you can get them where they kind of can stand still with using fans or thrust to hold it in position. But again, you would know that somebody's interfering with your signal. Surely. So you would automatically know, and you can communicate to the military, and that's why we have National Guard. And we have National Guard that has planes, and they have fighter jets, and the National Guard secures the airspace over the United States. So the Illinois National Guard, every state has a National Guard, I'm almost certain, or most every state, and the National Guard secures the airspace over their state. And so you have a group of states working together, 50 continental, that are securing the airspace over the state. The military secures the airspace over our waterway with the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard goes up, and then our international waterway, and you have the military securing the airspace outward, but the National Guard is securing the domestic airspace. So those weather balloons, that's all the National Guard. That's not the U.S. military. That should have been the National Guard and National Guard units and National Guards monitoring the airspace and National Guards taking down those weather balloons. So those, Chinese weather balloons. But that's the National Guard, Alaska National Guard, and so on. And usually National Guard are ex-military or people that went into the military, did training, and they didn't go into deployment with the military. They went into the National Guard instead of going into the Marines, say. They go do training in the Marines, but then they get deployed into the National Guard, and they don't go into the military, which is focused X-word. So our National Guard, and they work with the Coast Guard. So the National Guard has all the airspace and it secures all the land space. So the National Guard secures everything in the state. And the National Guard works with the state police, the county law enforcement, and the local law enforcement to secure air, ground, and water. So the National Guard is supposed to have patrol boats, truly, patrol boats. They're supposed to have marine boats, the National Guard, and they're responsible for waterway as well. So they work with the state, but the National Guard has the whole state, and they work with the state police, the county and local police to secure all the waterways. And they secure the waterways, and they secure the atmosphere above the state. And so you have these multiple layers, and then you have the federal government that's watching between states. National Guards are working together, but the federal government is interstate commerce with the FCC, right? The Federal Communication Commission. From state to state, you got to pay for the airways. So the FCC would get a lot into fiber optic cable. And I'm right here on Lake Michigan, and you can lay fiber optic across Lake Michigan. And that means you can generate through, like I said before, you can send light and light from electricity into light, back into electricity, not only communication, but energy. And so you can lay it across Lake Michigan. So you don't have to dredge up. You use the same thing they're doing for the ocean. Now you can lay infrastructure across the lakes. So there's ways that we can make things unbelievably secure, and then we can work with our NATO partners, helping them secure, and then we can have all these secure individual communications, and we don't have to worry about bad agents, and bad agents have to be verified to be on the infrastructure. Yeah, they can't just use regular general airspace. So if you see regular radio signals going out and so on, you know that they're unapproved. And the whole point is you can capture now unapproved communication. So general airway, when you start putting everything into specific pathways, then anyone that's not into the pathway that's approved is now unapproved communication, like they used to have during World War II. They had the radio trucks that drove around, and they had, you look at them, the Germans had a lot of them, but also they used them in the one movie with Brad Pitt to figure out where they were communicating, sending out radio communications to the German, and it happened to be Brad Pitt's wife. But the tracking truck tracked it right to her doorstep. So you used to have and who can do this? The police. The police. They have the radio tracking trucks, and they just have that little ball on top of their roof, and all it's doing is checking on the singles that are going out, making sure they're approved singles, so they can look for non-approved radio transmissions. So things can start getting really secure. Even on subways, everything has to go through a secure transmission. So that means cell phones, you have to 100% identify anyone having a cell phone. They have to take the picture of them and everything. There's no more drop phones. You cannot have people having disposable phones. So everybody has to show an ID and be verified and so on. And I believe with cell phones, now they have to take fingerprints. A thumbprint to get a cell phone. At least a thumbprint to get a cell phone. And so you're saying somebody's going to cut off their thumb so you can't get a print. Okay, that's possible. Or like, Seven, he shaved things off of his fingers, but you're looking for that too. If somebody has filed down their prints, yeah, truly, filing down, you can sand down your prints so they don't leave a residue, but you can get a chemical, a DNA from the oil. But the whole point is people can't shave down their finger like he was using a razor blade, but that's a stupid way to do it. He was skimming off the skin. All he had to do is, I have a revolving sander at my house, and I can put my fingers on it, and it can grind down my fingerprints so that I don't have, any indentations on my fingers, so I don't leave a print. But you're looking for people sanding down their fingerprints. And so, again, and that's why you take a big toe print, right? So you have big toe prints, and we're supposed to take toe prints and fingerprints. Because sometimes you got to identify somebody by their foot. So we should be taking fingerprints and toe prints. And now we have retina identification, voice identification, which doesn't do you any good when you're dead, but the retina identification does do you when somebody dies. Retina identification, toe prints, fingerprints. So, and then lastly, DNA. So we have a problem identifying military troops in that. Well, if you have the DNA in that, somebody blows up, you can get genetic material. So, we're supposed to be taking these things, and now they have heartbeat identification. And everybody has a unique heart rhythm, and now that you can identify people by heartbeat. It is another way to verify people. So we have all these forms of human verification, and if you're using all the different forms, it's impossible to fake. So if you change your face or do something to your eyes, you still have your heart. Now you can say you get a pacemaker, and that can change rhythm, a pacemaker. So, again, but you're doing fingerprints, eye, toe prints, DNA. They can't change their genetics, right? There is some now DNA altercation with medicine, DNA and RNA, where you can change for medical purposes. But God forbid we get people into recoding their DNA so they can beat the DNA tests. Surely, they're changing their own DNA sequencing, their coding, which is possible if people get the knowledge, and now we're using it for medical purposes. But remember, everything for medical purposes can be used for evil, and they literally can change somebody's DNA, and so when you test them, they don't test as the predator. So, again, who's handling this stuff as we get all this capability? I told you, things are getting more critical, that you have ethical people handling things. When people can do this, all these genetic alterations, you need people like plastic surgeons have to notify, and it has to go in the database of any changes made. There has to be, and they have to audit plastic surgeons' offices and that. All that stuff has to go in. And medical insurance companies and that, if they pay for plastic surgery, then we get a track through the insurance companies. So I don't understand why they don't have an option. Just like dental, you can put on orthodontics. Orthodontics is cosmetic surgery. Cosmetic surgery. So orthodontics are considered cosmetic. But somehow on dental care, you can add orthodontic coverage. Truly. And you can buy up orthodontic coverage on your dental care. Well, that's cosmetic surgery. So why can't we add a cosmetic rider to health insurance? Why can't you pay more in the premium, and through it, you have to be in and so on. You have to be on the plan for a year or two or so on. And then there can be a hook on the back end that you have to keep the plan for another 5 years, or there's a recapture. So if you cancel the health plan anytime, and it could be a corporation, they have a health plan and they move it, the insurance company now can penalize you for moving the health plan. And if I was a health insurer, I would do that. I would penalize them for moving the health plan. Well, how did they do this? Before banks, when interest rates were higher, banks could do the recapture on the interest rate, and they would get their money. They would make their money if you terminated the CD early or the annuity early. That, annuities have the descending 7%, but banks started doing that on CDs because the interest rates were ultra low. And so when you terminate the CD early, banks didn't capture enough money. So banks, my client terminated her CD, the bank charged her a penalty towards her principal. And now they're doing that when interest rates were low. Guess what they did with the mortgage market? All the mortgages now, when they lock you in at that interest rate, they stop people from refinancing. They charge you a termination fee according to how long you were in the mortgage. So it's stopping people from refinancing, dropping from when interest rates drop from 5% to 4% to 3%. Banks were getting too much turnover and couldn't make their money. So what did they do? They put a penalty in if you terminate the mortgage early. Now they charge you a recapture penalty, and most people didn't refinance now because the recapture penalty was too costly. So now health insurance companies can put this penalty into health insurance plans. And if you terminate the health insurance plan early, you get a penalty, a recapture penalty. And they charge you X amount of dollars. So now health insurance companies can be right side up knowing that you're going to continue on with the plan. And if you terminate early, they're going to charge you a penalty. Here I am by Loyola in Rogers Park, right on Lake Michigan. And the funny thing is, you think there would be an exchange between here, Rogers Park, and Evanston Northwestern, right up the street. Do you know here, Loyola can use Northwestern Stadium? Why wouldn't Loyola get a football team and use Northwestern Stadium? Evanston is right up the street. I used to go between two. I was going to Northwestern and Loyola, I think, simultaneously. And I could take classes here and then hop over to Northwestern, right up the street, right up Sheridan Road. So now the new stadium that they're building, they can do in partnership with Loyola. And it can be a joint stadium with Loyola University. So the new stadium they're building right up the street, and it can be Northwestern and Loyola Stadium. And so they wouldn't label it. No big deal. And so they would label it jointly. And so on certain days, it's Rambler Stadium. On other days, It's Wildcat Stadium. But Loyola can share with Northwestern the stadium. And that brings the profitability up, and they can sell skyboxes and all that now to Loyola alumni and so on, and also Northwestern alumni. Surely. So the skyboxes can be sold to both. And so the Loyola would have the skybox during Loyola games, the Northwestern would have the skybox during those games, and then whoever wants to buy the in-between for the concerts and theatrical plays. We had our theatrical play put on at our football stadium. We did, I think, Romeo and Juliet in football stadium. And we had the stage in the middle of the football stadium, and we did the theatrical play at my high school in the football stadium. And so we sat in the stands watching the play. So they can have big theatrical plays, not only music events, but big theatrical plays. So, and now Loyola's also, their soccer team can use the stadium. Northwestern's soccer team can use the stadium because a football field is great. It can double, and so you just have expanding and contracting stands. So you open up for the soccer field and you contract for the football field. And so now Loyola Soccer and Northwestern, so they can join together in this new stadium that's getting built. And you think Evanston would have a sister city, Rogers Park, and Rogers Park would have a sister city, Evanston. So they connect to each other. So I'm not going to go up that way. I got to go grab some food. But again, if I go up this road, I run down the street. And so Northwestern and Loyola should be working together to build this corridor. Truly, here's a Super 8 motel. Great place to come in, stay at the Super 8, low cost rooms, and go to a game at Northwestern or go see the Loyola Ramblers play and stay at the Super 8 motel. Why not? So you're here on campus, you can experience everything and go out and enjoy everything. So Evanston and Rogers Park need to start building this corridor together. Evanston and Rogers Park. And so there should be this Lakefront Association. Lakefront Association. Illinois Lakefront Association. And then you can have the Interstate Lakefront Association. But you have to be on the lake to be part of the Lakefront Association. So you have to be, like Rogers Park has a bunch of lakefront. Evanston has a bunch of lakefront. So your municipality has to be on the lake to be part of the Lakefront Association. And so you have the Illinois Lakefront Association, the Wisconsin Lakefront Association, the Indiana Lakefront Association, the Michigan Lakefront Association, and this is the Interstate Lakefront Association. So you have this Interstate Lakefront Association. So we deal with the Illinois Lakefront Association. And so that all the communities, different communities in Chicago, wards, aldermanic wards, like Rogers Park, would be part of it. And then Hyde Park, I think, is on the lakefront. And I forget which communities have lakefront. Like Streeterville's on the lakefront, I think. And so they would be part of the Lakefront Association. Here, I'll go up to Evanston if this allows me enough video. But you can have this between these two schools, and then the Lakefront Association build the lakefront corridor. Yeah, this wicket turn here. And here is the beautiful lakefront, and there's a little park right here. So Juneway Terrace Park, it's right by the lake. And this is where you have private beaches. Rogers Park, a lot of it, you have private beaches, and then University. So Loyola should have its own private beach. Loyola. Northwestern has a lot of private beaches. Now, the bad thing about Northwestern compared to Loyola, but Loyola experienced it, is the cold winds blowing off the lake in the wintertime. You ever walk across the Northwestern campus in the wintertime when the wind is blowing from the lake? You get that dampness, and so you get that bone-chilling cold. So you can see Northwestern right down there. So I said a long time ago they got to do something about the wind blowing through the campus, and so they got to position the buildings correctly in that so they can redirect the wind correctly so the campus doesn't get that cold during the wintertime from the cold winds blowing off the lake. So they have to shelter it and make it more friendly, and so does Loyola in that. So you can figure, like in Chicago along Oak Street and that, they can put up wind barriers. That's called fencing, right? But another way to do wind barriers is putting up a lot of vegetation, trees, but they don't have to be ultra tall. But you can put up trees, and first of all, trees stop soil erosion. Shrubs and trees. So you can put not really tall trees, lower trees, and then you put in shrubs in that, and that can protect. And then that also protects from soil erosion, and you get them to grow down, the roots to grow down deep, and that holding the soil together, making it extremely strong, because the roots weave in and out of the soil, holding all the soil together. So you can stop erosion by putting proper shrubbery and smaller trees along the lake, but also you get a dampening effect on the community, keeping it moderating temperatures, so you don't get the low, the cold lake breeze, right? So, and it's cool in the summertime. Obviously, you wouldn't get as much breeze, but again, the trees that you're planting for the winter, they have to be like evergreens and things, and so things that bloom during the winter and are not so much large blooms during the summer. So you want to be minimum during the winter and more prevalent during the winter and less prevalent during the summer, so you get the nice cool breeze off the lake. But remember, the trees in that and all the shrubs in that, they suck up humidity. So Chicago, the problem is you get too much humidity in that, but again, if you have a lot of green in that, it releases, but it also sucks in humidity. So you want to have certain greens that are more thirsty. So you're balancing off between ones that are releasing more moisture to ones that are taking in more moisture. And so to control the climate in the zoning, you got to change between vegetation that releases moisture and vegetation because it respirates, and vegetation like cactuses, they don't release moisture during the day, and so they respirate more at night, and the night air cools down and the water condenses, and so the reason they're moving water into them in the evening and preserving water during the day. They don't respirate during the day, and they open up at night, but the air cools down in that, and that means the moisture condenses, and so the cactus can pull air out, and that's why deserts are so dry. Cactuses, pull moisture out to survive during the night, and they don't release moisture during the day, so deserts are very dry. So cactuses are good in controlling humidity, but you need to make more humidity so you don't get the desert, right? And so you need things that release humidity. So that's what we never balance in all this zoning. They never look at how much the trees take in to how much the trees release. So you can figure out a balancing, how much it takes out of the soil to how much they put back in the soil, to how much vapors they release out into the atmosphere, to how much vapors they take out of the atmosphere. And so all these places have been putting up stuff blindly. And I found this out in Scottsdale, where they are having all their allergies, and then the humidity was going up because they had all this natural grass and people are watering, and they are having an issue because it was getting hot and it was getting humid at the same time. High heat and high humidity, it was coming more unbearable. So they started reversing it. But so in these communities, we have to do an inventory of what types of trees we have, what types of shrubs and the grass and so on. And then you got to figure out how much rainfall's coming in and how much snowfall and how much is getting absorbed and how much is getting released back into the atmosphere. And who can do this? All the universities. They have lots of students. It's called research projects. You already have your ground troops, high school students, college students, grad students, PhD students, and they're led by faculty, and they can do all this research on all this stuff. And it's part of what? Their grade. They pay to do the work. Yeah, they pay to get the education, to be run by the professors and the TAs, teachers' assistants, which usually are PhD students or grad students. And so they had this, and here's Northwestern's campus, which was right up the street from Loyola. So you can get this lakefront corridor that can cooperate with each other, building it. And they have a nice bike path, but this bike path doesn't extend it all the way into Chicago, does it? No, it doesn't. And so you can get these universities, Loyola and Northwestern, that are right here, Rogers Park and Evanston, working together. And Evanston did a good job making student life better because they redeveloped their downtown. So when they did, I went up here years ago when they redeveloped and opened a new movie theater, and then they put restaurants around the movie theater and that. And the whole point is, as Evanston redeveloped this community, it was making things, campus life, better for Northwestern students and faculty. Yeah, faculty needs good quality life, and faculty has kids, and they want their kids to go to good preschools and elementary schools and high schools. And so to grab top talent, teaching talent, you have to have this infrastructure of lifestyle and education and arts and so on. And so these schools can work together in a symbiotic relationship. And, you know, Evanston and Northwestern, I'm talking about right here, but in general. And so the lakefront corridor can develop it out. This is the largest land grant school in the United States. Yeah. This land was given free to, it was via grant to Northwestern. All the land that Northwestern has was given to it free. F-R-E-E. There was a donor, and I don't know who donated the land. But the problem that Northwestern, as I explained to my friend John Zeef, is Northwestern wasn't paying property tax. Yeah, because they were using infrastructure. Now, they have their own infrastructure, but they were sharing infrastructure with Evanston as well, and they weren't paying taxes, property taxes, feeding into the village of Evanston. And so there's been a battle between Northwestern and the village of Evanston, and I told my friend John Zeef that moved here that they have to come to a conclusion where they can do cost sharing between the village and the university. The university needs to pony up money to the village of Evanston. And why would they do that? Think about it. That money goes in and they can, have an arrangement. It goes into better schooling and, certain development and everything else. that promotes faculty and student life. So when they're giving it their projects, they have a say-so now in what Evanston does, what the village does, because they're contributing to the village's coffers. So now they can have a say-so in the development of Evanston, and Evanston and Northwestern to start a symbiotic relationship, talking to each other and building each other. And so Northwestern builds Evanston, and Evanston builds Northwestern. And so here's the arch right here in the campus. So going into the Northwestern campus. But I don't know why it's not lit and more prominent. It's their, signature entrance. Around the corner, and here's the church. I don't know if the students go to church right here, but I think there's several churches right around the university. But if I was running this church, I would be focusing on getting the student population. Like Jen, she went to a church in, I think, Champaign or something that was locals, but she found the church on her own and went to that church. And so all 4 years she went to church at the University of Illinois. Now, it was informal, but she went to church and did it on her own. So I don't know, I forget the name of the church in that. So here is Northwestern, right? And I just showed you, I came from Rogers Park, and here's where you enter. The parking garage is right here. And so this is where I used to go in. This is a building, but the parking's right over here. And so you have the lakefront. And what did Northwestern offer? What Loyola could offer, but people came up here for summer wrestling camps. Wrestling camp. Northwestern used to offer, and I don't know how good the wrestling team is, but Deerfield High School, some of the kids, I wanted to go, but I couldn't. They went to wrestling camp at Northwestern University. So they have a wrestling camp. They should have a baseball camp and a football camp and that. And those camps are run by who? The coaches. Yeah, the coaches. And so they run camps for high school and elementary school students at Northwestern, and they can do the same at Loyola. And they could run academic camps. Oh, yeah. Summertime academic camps. Get ahead camps at Northwestern and Loyola, where high school students that are behind or want to get ahead on their academics go up here, and they run summer camps that help them with their academics. So you can go here, and the faculty set up programs for elementary and high school students, get ahead programs or fast track programs, not fast start programs, but you say enhancement programs. So Loyola and all that can run programs, even programs out of the medical school for people that are interested in going into the medical field. So they can do from elementary school. I love the show Doogie Howser, elementary school and high school. They can run camps for elementary and high school students that are related to the medical field or to the science field. They can do science camps and writing camps. How about literature camps, future writers, and so on. So the university can generate through all kinds of different, all their majors, working with their faculty, can set up all these different types of educational camps that can benefit the elementary and high schools around them, that people can come down for athletic and academic. They can have music camps and theater camps at Northwestern. Northwestern has a theater school and a music school, so they can run theater camps for high school and elementary, music camps for high school and elementary. And so you can choose these different camps to come up to and experience at Northwestern and Loyola. And it's another way for the university to enhance the education of the youth and further propel them when they get into the school to be able to handle the load. And the university can start raising its standards and start pushing even higher academic standards and higher achievement. because they have candidates that can meet those higher standards. And so if you take these things and perform well in their, early start programs, these camps, it gives you credit towards Northwestern or Loyola or University if you, once you are graduating from high school, that you might want to attend Loyola or Northwestern, and, it gives you another way in, and you got to know the faculty in elementary school and high school, and you go to college, and, teachers in college are there for 30, 40, 50 years or more. So, again, they tend to be there for incredibly long stuff. Gordon was teaching into his 80s, so there are probably teachers who teach. The nun who taught me at Benedictine, she was in her 70s or 80s, I think maybe her 80s, and she was teaching rhetoric, freshman literature, and in particular she taught poetry and so on. And she was awesome, and she was a poet as well, a nun who was a poet. So me and her got along great. She was awesome. And I did fine in the course. Average, I got a C. But the whole point, me and her got along, and I learned, and it was a really good course, and she was much older. A lot of the priests in that, they were teaching in their 70s and 80s. So the teachers teaching in their 70s and 80s and that is normal for colleges. And so I don't know why it wouldn't be normal for high schools or elementary schools that they have these long-term professors at these educational institutions. I'm not saying all of them take the long-term track, but all my professors, I think Gordon's still teaching. He might be in his 90s. But I know Dr. Drebecki is, and he's in, 70s maybe? 70-something? Yeah, I guess he must be in his 70s or something. But most all my professors are all still teaching, and they don't plan on retiring. Dr. Drebecki didn't plan on retiring. It doesn't mean you can't take your retirement. You can still take it's just like Social Security. People can take it at 70 and continue to work. So you get Social Security at 70 or at 67 if you want, and you can continue to work with no penalty. Before 67, there's a penalty. But at 67, you can take it with no penalty and continue on working. So before 67, they want to discourage you, so they charge a penalty. I think they should charge a penalty to 70 and discourage people from taking Social Security before age 70. And so, I don't know. But anyways, you're still receiving your pension, your secondary income. So, and you can put that right back into a retirement plan in that because of, maybe a non-qualified or whatever, if you don't need the money. It's whatever you want to do, but you can still, so pensions go on the way they would go on, but you're getting the money and then using it to enhance. You can do more elaborate vacations and more elaborate this and more elaborate that, and, so it's supposed to be your golden years, right? So they can do that to create a more elaborate world. And now I'm heading back from Northwestern back to Rogers Park. And so this is all lakefront right here. And this is the gap between Evanston and Rogers Park. And again, they should be developing this community. And I don't understand why they're not cooperating between these two communities and then getting the lakefront corridor community where these, there's all this cooperation along the lakefront and developing it and preserving it and so on. And then there's an incident here with Chicago's Finest. I truly wish it was true, Chicago's Finest, that you had high standards to be a cop, that you had to have this immense background. So a nice female cop, and there's more female officers, and we need more female officers. And I've seen a lot of really cute female officers. Anyways, but the whole point is I'm back in Rogers Park now, and this is Loyola. But the whole point is, and it says Rogers Avenue. And yeah, Mr. Rogers. And this is Sheridan that connects both of them. And Evanston and Northwestern and Evanston and Rogers Park, Loyola, and the city of Chicago should be talking about building this area. And I believe in Dyke Stadium, and it's not the same as the female thing, and just the last name. Anyways, the whole point is they can share the stadium. I don't know why they wouldn't. And they both have medical schools. Loyola and Northwestern have very good medical schools. And my doctor is from Loyola. So Loyola and Northwestern have very good medical schools. Northwestern has a dental school. Loyola, my friend Steve went to dental school, I think. Oh, no, he went to Case Western in Cleveland. But others went, Loyola has a dental school, almost positive. And I assume they have a nursing school. DePaul has a nursing school. I assume Northwestern has a nursing school, and so on. So, anyways, you have these professions that you're going to have turnover, and people are going to have issues, and they're going to need to deal with. So it's not the profession goes on. People are going to have issues that arise for many different reasons. And, there's skiing accidents, mountain climbing accidents, all kinds. As people get more recreational, like I pulled my ham and I had to go to the hospital and have it looked at, but through athletics. So many people get sporting related injuries when they're active, or they get plantar fasciitis from running, or there's issues that they'll have to deal with. So body, when you're training in that, there's issues that'll come up and you'll have to deal with them. And so you'll get more medically, more activity related situations. And I told you, you'll get more, there's the lakefront down there, but you'll get more activity-related injuries. And that's fine, right? But people are, overall, they're more likely to recover. So that means they get long-term clients, right? And so, you get your checkups and everything else, and then you have your hiccups. But there's not these tragic, so they can cure and monitor the cancer patients and so on and so forth. And so I don't get it. And you don't have to have evil. So you don't have to have evil. So people are going to do things, and through those activities, sometimes they're going to overdo it. Like Jen, she used to get sick and throw up. And then I needed, there's Tums to calm down her stomach and so on, and take care of her and clean her up. But she overdid it because she gets excited. Normally she never overdrinks, but she did it on her birthday as well. I think her 23rd birthday. Maybe her 24th birthday. Yeah, 23rd she was good. 24th she got sick. She overdid it. She was out. I told her to go out with Erica Wang. And she went out with Erica. Then Erica called me and said, "Hey, Mike, you got to come and get Jen." She was in the bathroom throwing up. So I had to come and get her right away. Being in the bathroom on the floor, puking into the toilet. Not where I want my girlfriend to be. So I went there. And I had to carry her out of the bar. Carry her. She couldn't walk, so I picked her up and I carried her into the car. I laid her down in the back seat. And then I took her home and I had to take her upstairs. Again, I basically used a luggage thing I put her in because it's a long way to carry her, and I don't want her bouncing up and down on my shoulder, because if she's bouncing up and down, if I'm carrying her as I'm walking or that, she might throw up. So I put her in the ant and took it upstairs. I borrowed it from the guy at the front desk, took her upstairs, and then I laid her down. I went and returned the luggage thing, and then I came back up and I cleaned her up, undressed her, cleaned her, and put her nightgown on, and then I put her in bed and took care of her. My responsibility as her boyfriend. When she's sick, I'm supposed to fully take care of her, watch over her, because I love her. So here's the church at Loyola. So this is Loyola's church, and there's the nuns, and they have the sister who is at the game, and I guess she's one of the nuns from here, but Loyola has nuns. So Sister Jean, yes. So again, all these buildings have private beaches. So all these buildings have private beaches. So if Lake Michigan is kept clean and beautiful and that, the beaches are worth more. But just like anyone, who wants to swim in something that's polluted with E. coli and So if they keep the lake pristine and that, it's awesome. And you can fish off the beach. So they can have, fishing licenses, and you can fish off the beach, and, or get a little boat and go out fishing on the lake from here. So they can have boats, but there is the closest boating thing where all these people can have, and that's what I said, these people down here to the harbor, which is off of Lakeshore Drive, all these people can sell boating slips. Yeah. So they work out a deal with the harbor that you have to live here to have a place in boat in the harbor. This harbor, so all these residents can have boats. Yeah, on the left side and right side. Costa used to live up here in one of these buildings with Steve and all that right here, and it was cool. And so I hit black ice on the corner up here and got in a little accident. It was the city's fault for not salting Lakeshore Drive properly. You can't see black ice. So anyways, all these on this side, both of them, the ones that have the beach, can sell beach access to these units on the other side. Yeah, beach access. So private beach, but you can sell beach access to these buildings and structures on the other side, and they would have a permit to access the private beach for these buildings. And it's another way for these buildings to generate revenue, but also make sure they know the people that are coming in, because the buildings have a certain amount of, security that goes into them. So reviewing their tenants, pulling a continuous background and continuous monitoring of their tenants. And so they could sell permits to access the private beach. And so part of living here is you have the ability to access the private beach. And so all these in Rogers Park have private beaches, and then you get to the general beach. But as you're moving down here, you get Lakeshore Drive, and there's a harbor up here. And so think of all these buildings right here. Don't they want the harbor? All these buildings right here that are right up against the park and that, I would assume they want boating permits. Boating permits, right? So it's a nice thing, and they can also lease boats at the harbor. Lease boats. You don't have to buy the boat. You can just lease the boat for the summer. And you can do a joint lease. So timeshare for boats. timeshare for boats. And so you have a boat leasing community, but it's a timeshare community, and you trade off on days. So some weekends you want it, other weekends other people use it in the timeshare. Same boat, but now it's a timeshare system for boats. And so these residents can have interest in a boat. Timeshare interest in a boat. So you can sell timeshare interest in boats. And so you're going to come up here, and the first harbor is up here, and it's at Belmont Harbor, I should say. But all those people at Rogers Park and all that would want to have access to boat slips up here. Boat slips. So, and then you can have, like I said, you can have a bunch of timeshare boats. So the communities can share, and then you can timeshare your own boat by joining the timeshare. But the marina has to approve that you be part of a timeshare, because people have to have a boating license and so on and so forth. And so they have to approve the people that run the boat. They have to have certain education and to be able to run the boat. So you can be part of the timeshare community for the boat. So, and you have Belmont Harbor. So all these buildings around here, and say you're just a building, and the building itself just leases one boat, right? Or is it Montrose Harbor, the first harbor? Not Belmont. But either way, say you're the building up here. The building can timeshare for the whole building. So the building says we have a boat, and part of renting or leasing at our building, or part of being part of the condo association of the building, we have one boat or two boats that we have timeshare with, and part of it, you get the access to the boat. Depending if you have a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, so on, depending on how much you pay in, how much your property value is if you own, and from that you pay into the association fees. So some people get more days, some people get less days, and the people getting less days, if they want more, they would have to be for the association, it's a buy-up feature. A buy-up feature. So if you want more days, you can buy up, and if they get enough, they can lease another boat. Yeah. The association now has, instead of 2 boats, now it has 3 boats that they have part of timeshare with, and that the building has access to because they have so much demand. And so now all these places along here, and hotel rooms, hotels and that can sell boating trips like the Spirit of Chicago and that people come in, and you think all these hotels, the Peninsula, the Ritz-Carlton, and so on, want to make, and so they can set up leisure tours with them, and the concierge can, sell these trips along Lake Michigan. I wanted drift fishing on Lake Michigan. Yeah, drift fishing boats, freshwater drift fishing. And then they have in Texas, in Florida, I went on with Jen, a cruise that left the dock and went into international waters, and we gambled in international waters, and then we come back. But they have that in Florida, but here there's international waters where you have Illinois has so much, Michigan has so much. Truly, they only own so much of the lake, and there's the middle, which is owned by the federal government. Truly. So the state owns so much, but in the middle is the federal government's property. So the state only has so much going out into Lake Michigan, and so does Michigan, but the general is international waters or interstate waters. And so you can go out in interstate waters and gamble, right? That's the federal government. So you would deal with the federal government on the interstate gambling. And the federal government's responsible for taking care of that portion So if you're laying cable across the lake, so much to Illinois, so much you would pay to the federal government, so much you would pay to the state of Michigan. And then any communities you go through with the cable, just like pipelines. So the state has their chunk, the municipality has their chunk, so does the federal government, and the county has their chunk. So everybody has a portion. So again, things can work really well. And this can be replicated around the world if you want. So you can do it with oceanfront communities like Laguna and Pacific Palisades and all these communities that are on the waterfront around the United States or in any country. And they have this oceanic association for all the communities along the waterfront. So they have their local, their county, their state, and their interstate association or inter-country. So, you know, sometimes I think North Korea might share some waterway with South Korea. So it would be an inter-country association, oceanic association. And then that means it can be global. And so everybody, it's very important for all those people to live along these bodies of water to preserve these bodies of water because their real estate depends on it. So they have a vested interest in their waterfront and the ocean or sea or lake. And it's the same with rivers. The people that live along the river have riverfront property, like in Kankakee and that. They go water skiing, and you can jet ski and wave runner, and they do boating and everything on the Kankakee River. So I went up there with my friend Colby, and his dad had a boat dock on the river, and he had riverfront property. So in Illinois, people along the river, like my friend Jason, lived in a building, and they had a boat dock on the Chicago River from the building. And part of living in the building is there was a boat dock. Just like you have River City. River City has a boat dock that's on the Chicago River. And part of living in River City is you have access to the boat dock at River City. So the Drake, they're right there on the lakefront. All these structures right here have a big vested interest in Lake Michigan. So this is all lakefront property. So this on this side, these are all lakefront property, these buildings. So as the beaches go and the lakefront go, so do the value of these buildings on Inner Lakeshore Drive. So if the lakefront gets better, their property value goes up. If the lakefront gets shittier, their property value goes down. And so Inner Lakeshore Drive turns into Michigan Avenue if you go straight, or if you turn left. And so, you know, all this is, you know, part of, you have so many hotels in that, but you can have people in town can get checkups, right? Business travel and that, so they're going to open up some medical offices at Water Tower. That's fine. But they can have tourist medical offices too. People can come in if they have fevers or headaches and so on and so forth. And the hotel can have a Minute Clinic association with those offices. So if they have any guests that have colds or anything that need to be checked out, the hotel can refer them. Maybe they have a little kid, and the little kid, because of the change of weather, that gets a cold. And so right down in Water Tower, they can go into this, you know, travel center doctor's office. And they specialize in dealing with tourists. So they can speak, you know, all the different languages. They have a setup for universal communicating and so on. And they work with the hotels. So shopping sprees down Lake Michigan, like here, Water Tower, and you got the Cheesecake Factory. And the funny thing is, there's nothing here that says the Cheesecake Factory is downstairs. Do you see anything? I see a little bit of the Starbucks sign, but I don't see anything that says Cheesecake Factory. Nothing. You don't know the Cheesecake Factory is there. And it does great business, but there's nothing that says it's there. And then right here, there's nothing that says the Ritz-Carlton Hotel is right around the corner. Do you know if you stay at the Ritz-Carlton, you should have VIP access to Water Tower? And Water Tower can have something worked out with Ritz-Carlton like they do at Disney. If you stay on property at Disney, you can stay later, I think, and you get an hour before opening. For everybody on property, the park opens up an hour before general public. So you have an hour on property before any of the general public, anyone staying at hotels off property. So you get an added boost of staying on property. So they can open up exclusively for guests of the Ritz-Carlton, the mall, and maybe it's 30 minutes before, or maybe it's an hour before. And so you can go into Water Tower and shop because you're staying at the Ritz-Carlton, and you can shop an hour before the general public, or they can do it late night, an hour after it closes. It empties everybody out, and it's just for people at the Ritz-Carlton. And so here's the Ritz. It's owned by Marriott. And then the residents at Water Tower. And so, and Wildberry, and then there's another hotel. So right around here. But anyways, here I'll show you the entrance to the Cheesecake Factory, and this is a rather long video. But again, all these places, it's very important. They're very close to the waterfront. And here's what they did to get access to the parking garage. They did a spiral, so they didn't take up much room. But here's a theater right here. So you have these plays right here. And this is the Playhouse Theater, Broadway Playhouse Theater at Water Tower. And it's right across the street from the John Hancock or 360. And the 360 has the Cheesecake. And these buildings can connect each other. And the John Hancock has residential too, and office as well. And so, you know, there's a symbiotic relationship. The Greater Michigan Avenue Association, which I used to go to, I was thinking about joining, but never had the money. My friend Jack was a member. And so here's Water Tower. And so there's the Peninsula Hotel and lots of high-end Hilton Hotel, the Park Avenue or Michigan Avenue Hyatt Hotel, and so on, all down here. And then you have all these malls and that. And so this is a very beautiful community, and can get the largest Starbucks in the world down here, Saks Fifth Avenue. And then there's off Saks Fifth Avenue where I used to shop. Couldn't afford to shop at Saks Fifth Avenue. I shopped at off Saks Fifth Avenue. And I shopped at Neiman Marcus, or Nordstrom's, but I shopped at Nordstrom's Rack. I don't know what Neiman Marcus discount is. Off Neiman Marcus or something like that. Here's the world's largest Starbucks. And it's right across the street from Ferragamo. And I love Tumi. I never bought Ferragamo, but here is Burberry, Jen's favorite, and right across the street used to be Coach. So Jen used to come down here to this place where I'm looking at now, used to be Coach, and she would come down and buy Burberry. And she wore a Paddington hat, and I called her, another nickname I had to her was Paddington, because she was like my female. Bears are both male and female. So she was my female bear, my Paddington. And so my little cuddly, beautiful, adorable little female bear. So anyways, she liked Burberry. She liked Coach a lot. And there's Garrett Popcorn. So, again, Chicago's famous popcorn. We have many famous popcorn in the city of Chicago. And you have Ann Taylor and Levi and, many things down here. And this is all part of Northwestern as well. Northwestern has a law school down here. Hyde Park is right up here. Hyde Park. University of Chicago is right up here. And it's right off the Intercontinental Hotel. You think University of Chicago has an arrangement with the Intercontinental Hotel? I would assume that visiting faculty and so on have an arrangement with the Intercontinental Hotel. So any events done, and I've been to many events at the Gleacher Center. Last one was with PIMCO, I think. No, not with PIMCO. Was it PIMCO? But I got, here was for my 401k designation. I went here for my 401k, had events here. And then I forget, not American Funds, forget what company it was. But anyways, it was a financial institution, and they had an event at Hyde Park. But you could stay at the Intercontinental Hotel. So they can work out an arrangement with them. And then you have Northwestern Law School down here, and they need to work out an arrangement with a hotel. And then you have here the Realtor building. This is where I signed up, me and Jen, and we went to classes to get our real estate license. So on the weekend, we went to class Saturday and Sunday on the weekends to get our real estate license. I signed her up and talked to her, and because she was in real estate, I wanted her to understand real estate better. So what better way than go through the educational process for a real estate license? So anyways, so she got that much more information and understanding of real estate. And here's the Intercontinental, and right around the corner, I'm going to Hyde Park. But you have DePaul downtown. Loyola used to have a downtown campus. I would assume Loyola would still have a downtown campus, but I used to go to school by the water tower. It was across the street, and it was Loyola. Now, Loyola has its law school downtown, but this was me taking, I think, religious studies at Loyola. And so I took it at the downtown Loyola. Here's the Gleacher Center for the University of Chicago. So all these universities have situations or campuses for their grad students and some for undergrad night school, right? You can do undergrad night school. You don't have to go to the day school. People don't understand night school. I used to take at the University of Arizona, they had classes that started at 7 p.m. They had a bunch of night school classes. So you could take your undergraduate as night school. So you work during the day, you get off of work, and you go to night school to get your undergraduate. You can go to Oakton Community College. They have night courses. You can get your associate degree at night. So you work during the day and you go to night school. So undergraduate night school is available. And so here's other hotels that they can work out. I don't know where Northwestern's law school works out. They have a deal with the Sheraton or the Lowe's. And then you have right here the Embassy Suites and others. And so there's this reciprocity. They can work out. They have visiting staff. And so there's a lot of universities, Roosevelt University and Robert Morris University and others, that they can work out with the different hotels and that. And so you can come in and stay at the hotel and do a night on, do a night on the town and say you don't want to do a weekend. So come and stay at night. I used to go here to the AMC Theater all the time and then go upstairs and then down the street. Here is another mall that no one knows about, but down the street is Navy Pier. It's an entertainment mall, but here's a shopping mall. This is North Pier. See, it says Navy Pier, but this is North Pier. North Pier and Navy Pier can work together. This focus here, now they have a bunch of boat docks too, and the funny thing is you can pick up tours off of North Pier too. Here, let me show you. So if you go down this way, you have North Pier. Right here has a slip, and so you can pick up tours right here and take a river tour from here or a tour that goes out onto Lake Michigan. And Lake Michigan tours from Navy Pier can enter the river through the lock and do a river tour of Chicago, a river architectural tour. And that's what I did on Shoreline architectural tours. They enter the river from Navy Pier, but they can be over here at North Pier. So, and then up here you got underground parking and you got NBC Studios. So you got NBC Studios, which is here, proud as a peacock, and the peacock fell over. I don't know if they picked it back up yet. But again, you have NBC news station, and you know, here's somebody getting double tickets. But you don't want the car sitting because, again, they should check out the car. You don't want car bombing, right? So now this is the thing. Think about this, that for anti-car bombing, truly, you gotta check your car in, but you have to check it in with a photo ID, or you have to use your app, your parking app, and on your personal phone that you have to verify with the phone number and a photo ID, a state ID. So when you park, you got to give a state ID, not only the license plates. It scans the credit card, but it scans your ID, and it looks at the picture of your face, and the parking meter, it takes a picture of your face and matches it to your state ID. So, and if you don't have that, you have a driver's license. So international driver's license can be faked, but still, you would have to show your passport and international driver's license. So it matches up the picture to your international driver's license, matches it up to your passport. And so when you're parking a car, you have to. So you can't wear a hoodie or anything else. And so you can't get car bombings anymore, right? Because you have to go and pay for your parking, and you have to identify yourself. So now either through your app on your phone, and remember, if every phone has to be identified by that person, and any stolen phone, you know, automatically with all the, you know, security fingerprinting and that you have to verify with a fingerprint or something else, and that way that it prevents any form of bombing. So even with parking garages now, you put the car, you remember the whole parking garage bombing at the World Trade Center? Well, the whole thing is, if you had to go into it and show your state ID and it matched it up with your face, and then it validated it with the system, the state ID, the driver's license and state ID cards, it validated the picture and everything, and validated you back to the image, back to the picture, and so on, then you can prevent car bombings in parking garages as well. It's just not scanning the license plate. It matches the license plate up to the person and so on. And so if people can be identified, unless they're a suicide bomber, they're not going to do it. So, and again, you make it very impossible for anyone for any form of car bombing or anything else. And we have the systems already in place. I have the parking app on my phone. They don't ask for verification, but they can verify me with the DMV in the state. So they have a relation with a security company, and that security company has a relation with the state to be able to verify state IDs and passports. And so they match up the cell phone number, because, again, the state has to have access to who owns the cell phone. And so they match up the cell phone with your state ID, with your car, and it all integrates to you. And if you're using somebody else's car, then the license plate says who the other owner is, and you identify, and you can go through on insurance apps. They can give temporary driver for your car. And so on the insurance app, and this is all done online now, you have to take a picture of them because everybody has a camera phone, and they have to have a picture and a driver's license for somebody to drive your car temporarily, even if you're a kid. So you set up your kids' driver's licenses and everything else, and if they temporarily are using your car, you have to photo over. Just like paying somebody's Uber and that. You have to have their driver's license and everything, or state ID card entered, and it must verify with an actual physical picture of them. So the picture must be live, and so they have heat sensors in the camera. Heat sensors, thermal sensors, and now in cameras, and it can tell if the person is actually a real person, or if they took a still photo, they use another photo, so you don't get catfishing anymore. Now the person, through the camera system, have infrared systems, and through the infrared system, it can tell if it's a real person or not. It can measure skin density and everything else. So through those systems, now they can see that it's alive and when the photo was taken. Actually, them at this particular time, the photo, and they have to show their ID. So you have a live photo of them that is verified through a dual camera that does infrared. And so they have to, in the system, have a certain setup, and now it verifies that it's a them, actual photo of them now, not holding up a newspaper or anything else. And so it verifies them, and it verifies that face to the ID. So you can't use any, Mission Impossible bullshit and that. It won't work because you won't come up right on the infrared camera. And you say, well, people can do this and that. It's very hard to match. There's a lot of variables going on. And so it's very impossible. So it matches up with the camera, and it verifies you through thermal camera, normal and thermal imaging camera, and that helps cell phone companies do all kinds of health checks and screenings, and you can work through the doctor. Yeah. So the teledocs now they're like, can I, turn the camera to you and let me see a thermal image? Let me see a thermal image of your vaginal or your penile or your rectum area. Let me have a thermal image, take the camera, show me, or the thermal image of your skin rash, or say, and I can point the camera down your throat and you do a thermal image of the internal of the mouth. And now teledoctors, it can be that much more effective through thermal imaging, infrared imaging. They can do thermal with infrared to see the radiation coming from the skin. So you pair up thermal with infrared. Infrared with thermal, and you read the radiation because the natural skin lets off a radiation. Yeah. Radiation level. You radiate. You have radiation coming from you. And so the thermal imaging paired with the radiation camera can watch cellular activity in that. And so now the teledocs can do better pairing up the thermal with the infrared. And now they can do all kinds of teledoctoring truly from home. And then you have the portable EKG and you just put your pad on it. They give it to you at the You have a heart issue, my doctor can say, okay, we prescribe a prescription, and now you pick it up at CVS. Truly, medical devices. And now CVS, you pick up the little pad where the two fingers can do the EKG because you have a heart issue. And now when you're doing the teledoc, you put your fingers on the pad and he watches the EKG. So you can make teledocting that much more effective, and then they can see the infrared as well. They can even watch your circulation using thermal and infrared. So if you use both, I mean, you get a pair of both worlds. So we can solve a lot of problems. So that's the point of no liars, no more. The truth sets you free. And if everybody has to be truly who they are and their resume and everything tracks, you can't remake yourself. That makes people, when you can recreate yourself, it causes a lot of problems. That's why I don't like sealed records. You can open my juvenile records. I don't have a juvenile record, but feel free to open up my prior to 18, my juvie. I don't have a juvenile record. So I want people to be held accountable from birth to grave, and you can't shed your history. And that's the problem that we do. We allow people to shed their past. So then they do bad things and they reinvent themselves. And that's why I want all the people in the black community, all the ones that raped and stole and everything else on those videos, I want them put into the system. So you can't shed your past. So those rioters that broke, that's your history. I'm sick and tired of people getting away. And that's why Jesus Christ and the disciples disclosed all their history. Because that's you, and that's how you'll be judged, from birth to grave. So you can't escape your history. So people don't make the mistakes because they think about it. This is going to trail me for the rest of my life. And it should trail you for the rest of your life. You did it. So then people think, I don't want to do it because it's going to tarnish me for the rest of my life. I told you, in heaven, there is no more forgiveness. So now everything trails you from birth to grave. Birth to grave. That's how you're judged. God doesn't want it anyway. There is no shedding. If you rape somebody, it stays with you for the rest of your life. And they pull up your record and it says you're a sexual offender. And that's how you rebuke people. Once done, like Kelsey Grammer with a 13-year-old sexual offender. It's not going anywhere. And nor should it go anywhere. He's got to live with his choices. No more escaping your choices. So you get bad people who think, oh, well, you know, God will forgive me and I can reinvent myself, and no more. That's why we got bad people moving all around the world, because they can escape the bad things they did. And they can reinvent themselves, and they go in, and that's why the Bible says the wolf in sheep's clothing. You just put the sheep's clothing on the wolf. You can't rebuke them if you don't know who they are. So, again, no more. It needs to end. You need to be fully accountable for what you do your whole life. And if you have an abortion, it goes on your record. And it stays with you for the rest of your life that you made that choice. So there's no shedding your past. Then you won't want to be a two-time offender. And that's why these people had these multiple abortion after abortion after abortion. No more. Because you can't be a multiple offender because it goes on your record. And so people know, just like anything.